live in the Lakeview neighborhood of New Orleans. This is the house that my husband and I bought 20 years ago when we married. As you can see,
it's a raised house, so you can walk up the front steps and into the front door.
I want to show you how high the water was in our house. Whenever I tell people that, they look down at their feet, and I say, no, you have to look up here. This is our Katrina water line. As you can see, it's even with the top of the front door.
Most of the houses in our neighborhood that didn't get torn down after the storm have Katrina plaques, like this one. My husband, my 3 sons, and I left town Saturday when we heard that Katrina was coming in our direction. We didn't want to get caught up in the evacuation traffic, so we packed our bathing suits thinking we were going to take a little family vacation. We'd never been to Graceland in Memphis, so we headed north in that direction. We left our second car in the garage, and we left all the family photos at home, never dreaming that our raised house would be full of water.
Our neighborhood is next to the 17th Street Canal. This is where the levees broke on Monday morning, August 29, 2005.
There are some new houses and plenty of empty lots where the houses used to be. When we heard about the levees, we were in a hotel in Memphis. My husband is an electrical engineer, and he was told to report to work immediately in Beaumont, Texas. On the way to Beaumont, we stopped at McDonald's in Longview, Texas. I was sitting with my sons, who were 6, 11, and 13 years old at the time, and we were trying to figure out what we were going to do. The manager at McDonald's overheard our conversation and came up to us. He offered to let us stay in his house, even though we were total strangers. That was our first example of how kind everyone was to us after Katrina. We lived in a hotel in Beaumont until the end of September, when we got an apartment in Port Neches, Texas, south of Beaumont, where my boys had started school again. The day we were to move into the apartment, we received an evacuation notice for Hurricane Rita. All 5 of us got in the car to evacuate again. We spent 24 hours sitting in traffic before we could get out of Texas because of all the evacuees. The only material possessions we had left at this point were in the car with us, so we began to call the car our Ark. Mary Baker Eddy defines Ark in the glossary of Science and Health with Key to the Scriptures as safety, and that the spiritual reality of all things are created by God and exist forever. That's what we were learning from this experience, that the spiritual reality, the spiritual substance and relationships of our lives were continuing to exist even when there was no matter to support it. When Hurricane Rita hit the Louisiana-Texas border, it damaged the apartment building where we were supposed to live, so we had to decide where to go next. My husband was told to report to work in Little Rock, Arkansas, so we headed in that direction. My husband was told he could stay on a cot at the power plant in Little Rock, but what about the rest of us? I had gotten a message from someone at church that Principia was offering scholarships to kids who couldn't go to school because of the storm. Principia is a school for Christian Scientists in St. Louis, Missouri. Since all my friends and neighbors from New Orleans were also evacuated, and since the kids and I had nowhere else to go, we decided to drive up to St. Louis. When we got to St. Louis, my husband bought another car so he could turn around and return to work, first in Jackson, Mississippi, and then back to Beaumont, Texas, for the rest of that school year. My sons and I were treated like members of the Principia family that year. It was the best place we could have landed. I remember being thankful at the Thanksgiving service in St. Louis that everything we had at that moment was given to us by other people. A friend shipped me some clothes, some parents donated mattresses and bedding and a sofa. We even got a keyboard. Our Christmas decorations had been safe in our attic, so my husband brought them up to us for our St. Louis Christmas. That Christmas, Pren college professors sent my boys Christmas presents, but the sweetest surprise came from a little boy in Salt Lake City. When he had his birthday party, he asked that donations be given to some Katrina kids his age, and the Mother Church put him in contact with us. It was wonderful receiving a letter from him because we felt as if we had friends and supporters everywhere. While my sons and I were in St. Louis, my husband and his dad cleaned out our house in New Orleans. The structure of the house was fine, but all the plants and trees were dead from the flooding, and the inside of the house and furniture was ruined from the flooding. We immediately had the house gutted and boarded it up, hoping that we could return one day. After my husband spent a year in Beaumont, he was transferred to Jackson, Mississippi, and we joined him there when school finished at the end of May. We still miss New Orleans, and after another year, he was able to transfer back to our hometown. It took us more than 2 years to move back home. We were one of the first families back on our block, and when one of our movers saw the neighborhood, he said it looked worse than war-torn Saigon.
After the storm, our whole neighborhood had a bathtub ring around all the houses. Here the line. Block in Lakeview has at least one boarded-up house where the people never returned. Behind me is an original Lakeview house that's being redone. If you look down the street, there's a house that's been torn down, and then there's a new house. Quite a few of the new houses are raised 8 feet, so they'll be okay if it floods here again. This mound of dirt is where my children went to elementary school. My youngest son was just starting first grade when we evacuated from Katrina. It's been almost 5 years, and as you can see, the school hasn't been rebuilt. It's got a wonderful sign saying we'll be home soon. This is our neighborhood library. It's been in a FEMA trailer now for 2 or 3 years. It's actually got quite a few books in there.
This is how one of my neighbors described living in Lakeview. She said that it was a special place because there are only a few places where you can live where it gets better every day. Let me tell you about the rebirth going on.
This is an empty lot, which has become a neighborhood park. It's across the street from my house, and my neighbors keep the grass cut. When I lost my trees after Katrina due to the flooding, our neighbor donated large, full-grown crepe myrtles in a spot where I can see them from my house. We celebrated our new trees with crawfish boil. We've learned to enjoy the moment and make each other whole. Here's Fourth Church in Lakeview. As you can see, they've done a wonderful job rebuilding.
The real rebirth has been spiritual here. Most of my neighbors have lost their bitterness about losing their material possessions, which was a lesson for us in grace. We also learned that our home is not a house. Our home is much bigger than a house. Within days of Katrina, our neighborhood had started a Rebuild Lakeview internet site so that all the neighbors could keep in touch while we were dispersed. We learned that beauty is truly in the eye of the beholder. Our neighborhood doesn't look like it did before the storm, but it is healing. The beautiful thought about this is that my neighborhood now is full of children who love being here. They have empty lots for their airsoft wars. They have bike trails galore in the adjoining golf course, which hasn't reopened yet. When it says in Zechariah about the streets of the city shall be full of playing boys and girls playing in the streets, came true for us. We learned about life with a capital L, to see a future when everything looks so dead. It was our resurrection. Finally, and most importantly for me, was something that I learned from one of my sons. In all, we had moved 12 times after Katrina, and I apologized to him for making him move so much. He said, "That's okay, Mom. We learned that God will care for you wherever you go."